Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
Your success will not be drawn in ink, it will be carved in scar tissue. The blueprint isn't handed to you, it bleeds out of you one decision at a time. Most people wait for clarity like it's permission. But clarity is not the beginning, it is the reward. The blueprint starts in darkness, not in confidence, in necessity. A man with no options doesn't beg for instruction, he builds his path from consequence. He stops asking what works and starts doing what's required, because the blueprint, before it becomes elegant, is brutal, primitive, ugly. It is held together by failure and stitched with pressure. Forget motivation, forget strategy. The first brick of your blueprint is suffering. Suffering you chose, suffering you outlasted. Success is less about knowing what to do, and more about knowing what you can endure without retreating. If you're still flinching when it gets difficult, you haven't begun. Because the blueprint doesn't respond to feelings, it responds to repetition. It's drawn every time you show up tired, every time you move when no one's watching, every time you finish a task no one will applaud. Those are the brushstrokes that sketch your ascent. There is no shortcut. And if one appears, burn it, because it leads to fragility. A blueprint built on comfort folds the moment pressure enters the room. True architecture demands resistance. Think about it. What kind of foundation crumbles under weight? A weak one. You want real strength? Then design a process that needs no applause, that demands no energy from others, that runs on solitude, silence, and self-respect. You don't need inspiration. You need rituals so embedded in your system that even your off days make monsters nervous. The blueprint begins when you subtract, not add. Subtract the need to be liked. Subtract the people who slow your pace. Subtract distractions disguised as entertainment. Because the blueprint cannot be traced through noise. It emerges in stillness, and stillness is where most collapse. They confuse it with boredom. But it's not boredom, it's the terrain before breakthroughs. It's the place where weak identities dissolve. Sit there long enough, and you'll hear your real voice again. The one that doesn't negotiate. The one that remembers why you started. Your routine becomes your religion. And this is where the blueprint tightens. Your schedule becomes sacred ground. Each habit is a vow. Each discipline is an altar. You stop treating your time like an open door. You close it, lock it, bar it from chaos. Because nothing invades the space where legacy is built. That space, your morning, your evenings, your creation hours, those are blueprints under construction, and you are the architect. No one else is coming. The walls will rise only if you stay consistent through the days no one sees. You have to design for resistance, not for praise. Build for war, not weddings. The blueprint doesn't bend to feelings. It conforms to formulas repeated under fire. If your habits can't survive doubt, they are decoration. If your goals evaporate when questioned, they are fantasies. The real blueprint is built when you no longer need to convince others, because you've already convinced yourself, not with affirmations, with action repeated beyond emotion. That's what draws the lines, that's what makes the map visible to the man in the arena. And the harshest part? You'll outgrow people who refuse to upgrade their own blueprint. You'll become intolerable to those still addicted to randomness. They'll call you obsessed, too serious, detached. Let them. They are tourists in the land you plan to conquer. They don't see the vision because they never suffered for one. Let them live in the crowd. Your blueprint was meant for altitude, not applause. And at altitude, oxygen gets thin. That's why few stay. But that's also why the view belongs to you. Momentum builds when you design friction into your system. Make it harder to stop than to continue. Tie your habits to identity so deeply that skipping them feels like betrayal. Turn your mission into muscle memory. Because success isn't a finish line. It's a feedback loop. And the blueprint, it adapts as you do. The more aligned you become, the more precise it gets. The more you execute without compromise, the more the path unfolds. It's not written in advance. It's unlocked through discipline, under discomfort. The mind does not build under pressure, it builds under precision. And yet most people operate with minds full of clutter, chasing 15 missions while committing to none. They call it grinding, but what they're really doing is bleeding efficiency through the cracks of poor architecture. The human brain can hold only 4 to 7 conscious thoughts at any given moment. That's it. That's the container, and when you overfill the container, clarity collapses. The first brick of your blueprint must be this: subtract what distracts, because a blueprint can't exist in a flood. It needs walls. Don't confuse motion with direction. Just because you're exhausted doesn't mean you're progressing. Most people are just running in loops, doing more, achieving less. The architecture of success doesn't begin when you add systems. It begins when you cut noise. When you look at everything on your list and ask, which of these actually moves the needle? And when you're honest, you'll find that most of what you do is theater. Busyness designed to numb you from the terror of real focus. Focus that would force you to confront your actual dream. Simplicity is not laziness. It's lethal. It sharpens the blade. Because clarity doesn't just direct your energy, it multiplies it. A focused man can outperform 10 distracted ones, not because he works harder, but because every move he makes speaks the language of priority. That's the secret. Success doesn't come from doing everything. It comes from knowing exactly what matters and doing it until the rest bows out of your way. You don't need more time. You need fewer obligations. You don't need more goals. You need fewer decisions. Decision fatigue destroys momentum. Every unmade choice saps you. Every open loop in your brain takes up space meant for execution. That's why clarity must come first. Clarity turns chaos into sequence. It organizes the storm. It turns 100 ideas into one empire. If your blueprint has too many entrances, nothing gets built. All you do is guard doors. The hardest part of clarity? Letting go of decent ideas, of good intentions, of someday projects that make you feel useful but never actually bring you closer. Clarity demands sacrifice, not of time, but of identity. You have to be willing to kill versions of yourself that chase everything. Because chasing everything builds nothing. A man who can't say no will never be able to say yes with power. Every blueprint worth building requires you to pour everything into one cornerstone at a time. You think clarity means seeing the whole staircase. It doesn't. It means choosing the first step with so much certainty that the second step becomes inevitable. That's how you build. Step, confirm, step, adjust, but step. Most never get clarity because they keep collecting blueprints instead of building one. They consume advice like candy, always learning, never applying. They think more options will save them, but options dilute. They paralyze. Success only arrives when the path narrows and the noise dies. A clear blueprint tells your brain what to ignore. That's half the battle. It stops you from switching lanes. It kills your appetite for quick wins and validates long-term obsession. Without clarity, your mind becomes a scavenger, constantly feeding on low-value tasks because they feel safe. With clarity, your mind becomes a sniper. One mission, one shot, and if it misses, it reloads with feedback, not failure, because clarity doesn't promise perfection. It promises direction with consequence. People underestimate how much internal chaos comes from unclear external goals. You feel anxious, not because life is overwhelming, but because your aim is scattered. A vague man cannot build sharp outcomes. Your energy is holy. Your attention is a resource. The moment you define the real mission, the one worth your blood, everything else becomes background noise. It no longer hurts to say no. It hurts to consider yeses that dilute your future. Your mind isn't tired, it's bloated, overcommitted, starving for hierarchy. That's what clarity offers, a ladder to climb. Without it, every rung is a distraction, and you spend your life climbing sideways. That's how decades disappear. But the man who steps back, who burns the excess, who sharpens his goal to a singular point, he becomes dangerous. He doesn't move more often, he moves with more weight, because his blueprint only allows for results, not rituals. Not rituals for show, but rituals for power. The next phase in building your blueprint is experimental education. Because clarity alone is not enough. Clarity gives you direction, but direction means nothing without velocity. And velocity is earned through exposure. The problem? Most people think they want something because it looks good from afar. They chase images, not instincts. They mistake admiration for alignment. You will not know what you're built for until you taste the discomfort of several arenas. Reading won't teach you. Talking won't prepare you. Only contact will. You don't uncover your calling, you collide with it through calibrated experimentation. You must become a test pilot for your own evolution. That means trying things before you're ready. It means doing them badly, clumsily, publicly. You must be willing to execute at a good enough level before mastery is even an option. But that discomfort is the furnace of insight. Because clarity isn't just cognitive, it's chemical. When you find the right challenge, something locks in, the friction feels sacred. Time moves differently. Energy regenerates instead of depletes. Your nervous system whispers, "This is worth enduring for." But you won't find that by sitting still. This is why step one matters. Without clarity, you experiment in chaos. You dabble with no direction. You try without commitment. But when clarity anchors you, every experiment becomes data. You begin testing not to avoid boredom, but to triangulate your next level. Every failed attempt becomes a necessary note in your blueprint. You stop fearing dead ends. You start tracking patterns. You don't need every door to lead somewhere. You just need one that won't shut after pain enters. The amateur seeks certainty. The architect of success seeks evidence. And evidence comes from the field, not the forum. You want a path? Build it. You want passion? Test for it. Do things, break things, fix them, move again, repeat. Your gift is not hiding behind one perfect choice. It's buried beneath 10 imperfect trials. But most won't start because most can't bear being seen at stage one. They want applause too early. They fear looking unqualified. But qualification comes after contact, not before. Your blueprint should resemble a laboratory more than a cathedral. Cathedrals are silent and sacred. Laboratories are loud and filled with smoke. That's what your early process will look like. Messy, fragmented, confusing. But within that noise, your mind is learning in ways no theory can offer. You're discovering your thresholds, your appetite for repetition, your ability to rebound after humiliation. You're teaching yourself how to build long before you ever master what you're building. You don't need to be excellent at everything you try. You just need to reach a threshold of proficiency, good enough to feel friction, good enough to see patterns, good enough to discern whether this path offers enough resistance to sharpen you and enough energy to sustain you. That's the formula. Not ease, not enthusiasm, but a ratio, challenge high enough to demand effort, joy deep enough to justify it. You only find that balance by walking through the dark halls of skill acquisition until one hallway echoes louder than the rest. And no, this step doesn't yield instant clarity. In fact, it complicates things before it simplifies them. Because once you try several things, you realize how many identities are possible. You'll be tempted to stop, to pick prematurely. Don't. Let the discomfort of choice burn off the false paths. Keep moving. Keep stacking attempts. The mind is a pattern-seeking machine. Give it patterns, give it pain, give it enough contrast, and it will tell you, this is where the blueprint thickens, the truth most people avoid. You won't even know what you're truly good at until you've been bad at something longer than you're comfortable with. That is where skill emerges. That's where insight blooms, not in early talent, but in late resilience. You want to know your path? Get rejected by 5, fail in 3, obsess over 1. And then, once the dust settles, observe what keeps calling you back, even when it offers no reward. That's not addiction, that's alignment. Don't wait to feel ready. The second step of the blueprint isn't permission, it's exposure. And exposure means contact with consequence. Only through consistent trial does your future start speaking. Not loudly, but clearly. And only when you're numb to the noise of perfectionism can you hear the whisper of, this might be it. And even then, keep testing, because your ultimate blueprint won't be built on a single pillar. It will be the compound insight of everything you dared to do before certainty arrived. A blueprint without execution is a fantasy in disguise. You can dream with vivid detail, you can visualize with spiritual precision, but until your vision is reverse engineered into daily production, it is noise. The third phase of the blueprint is where 99% disappear, because this is where clarity gets quantified. This is where your passion gets measured. If you can't name what needs to be done daily, weekly, monthly, you're not building, you're hoping. And hope has no seat at the table of high performance. Output orientation means defining your destiny in terms of units, deliverables, milestones, measurable outcomes. You want to be a writer? Don't say it, track the words. You want to be a trader? Count the executed trades. You want to build an empire? Show me your systems, your hires, your deadlines. Anything that can't be broken down into repeatable blocks is just a hallucination dressed in ambition's clothes. This is the moment you stop talking about becoming and start reporting progress. Like a soldier under command, you reverse engineer from the end. You stand at the summit in your mind and walk backwards, brick by brick, hour by hour. What would that version of you be doing today? What would their calendar say? What would they tolerate? What would they eliminate? That becomes your metric. If your current routine doesn't echo the footsteps of your future self, it gets deleted. Not tweaked, not delayed, erased. Because output orientation does not bend to feelings. It answers only to the scoreboard. The high performer thinks in units per time, not moods per day. They build output clocks, not inspiration playlists. The artist counts brushstrokes, the engineer counts lines of code, the athlete counts reps, And the philosopher counts insights because mastery has no room for vagueness. Vagueness kills accuracy, and without accuracy there is no tracking. And without tracking there is no pressure, and without pressure there is no growth. Output orientation restores pressure, not to crush you, but to clarify you. This phase demands you create a visible scoreboard, not to prove to others, but to discipline your own momentum. Human beings are addicted to feedback, but most people live in abstract goals. Be better, earn more, feel ready. That language is deadly. It postpones progress by refusing to specify. Output flips the script. It gives you a binary to measure against. Did you execute your unit today? Yes or no? No emotions, no excuses. Just a scoreboard built from self-respect. You begin crafting rituals that serve production, not performance. You don't aim to feel creative, you aim to publish. You don't wait to feel strong, you measure volume moved. You don't need to feel like an entrepreneur, you build systems that deliver value whether you're motivated or not. That's the shift. You stop identifying with effort and start identifying with outcomes. Not because outcomes define you, but because outcomes demand they keep your mouth quiet and your process visible. Output orientation also eliminates wasted ambition. The goals that don't withstand the pressure of being broken into outputs were never real. They were distractions dressed as dreams. When you force each goal through the filter of what needs to be done weekly to see traction, you'll see which dreams are durable and which are dead weight. You'll discover that most of your old aspirations collapse under specificity. Good. Let them die. The blueprint has no room for decorative fantasies. And now comes the grind. The boring, brutal beauty of building outputs, day after day. The non-glamorous hours where you don't feel like a visionary, you feel like a machine. But this is where identity rewires. When your nervous system learns that production is your baseline, that you don't chase consistency, you are consistency. Your self-image transformed from dreamer to deliverer because nothing embeds belief like finished work stacked over time. This stage will hurt. You will miss targets. You will hate tracking. You will want to skip the ritual, but you won't. Because the version of you that wins is now watching. You feel them behind your eyes whispering, "Don't betray me." And with every execution you close the gap. You stop being two selves and become one unbroken productive force. Your calendar becomes a weapon. Your output becomes your resume. Your reputation starts writing itself. This next step is where most promising blueprints collapse. Not from lack of effort, but from emotional attachment to an outcome that refuses to arrive on cue. Step 4 is detachment from the arc. Not indifference, not surrender, detachment. It's the art of consistent output without emotional dependency on immediacy. The arc bends slowly, sometimes invisibly. The seed does not grow because you scream at the soil. It grows because you water it, like a ritual, knowing full well you may not see the bloom until a season you can't predict. Martin Luther King said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." Success has the same anatomy. You bend the arc, not with grand gestures, but with tiny, unsexy actions repeated when the world is asleep. This is the paradox. The longer the delay, the sharper the eventual snap. That's how exponential curves work. Flat, 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 and then vertical. But most people quit just before the rise because their addiction to visible progress sabotages the very discipline required to earn it. Detachment does not mean you care less, it means you trust more. Trust the system, trust the process, trust the math. Output orientation gives you the structure, but detachment from outcomes gives you peace inside the storm. Because nothing poisons execution faster than desperation. Desperation to be seen, desperation to go viral, desperation to be applauded while the masterpiece is still drying. Your arc is bending, just not fast enough for your ego, and that's the war now. Between your ego's timeline and reality's laws. Your ego says, "I've done the work. Where's the reward?" Reality says, "Do it longer." Your ego says, "I'm tired of being ignored." Reality replies, "Good. Now you're trading for silence." The ones who win are not those who feel the most passion. They are the ones who perform without the craft of praise. Because their identity is built around the craft, not the confetti.